Let's see. Do we have any new people today? If you're new to this call, please unmic yourself and introduce yourself.
I'm new to this call. Hi, everybody. I'm Krista Wagner. I'm with the WUW group in
Great.
Cincinnati, Ohio. I met Peggy a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. Thank you so much, Peggy, for coming to visit our
You're welcome.
city. And yeah, looking forward to being on this call on a regular basis. So thank you for having
Wonderful.
us.
You're well. And anytime we're here for you. We're definitely
Thank
here for
you.
you.
I'm going
Appreciate
to
you.
start with a bit of a funny story, and not to interrupt anybody, but just so you know, like when I'm this is one of my favorite cups. Okay, I do understand it's a wine tumbler. I do understand that now. Okay, but I'm not drinking wine. It's 6 o'clock in the morning in California. But I didn't understand that it was a wine tumbler when I first kind of moved, and because my kids gave it to me, and obviously I do drink wine, but so I was walking around in my neighborhood every morning with this wine tumbler because I love hot coffee. I always have a lid on my coffee. I hate when coffee goes warm or cold or whatever. And so every morning for months and months and months, and new to the neighborhood, I had this wine tumbler coffee mug, and I went down to the park one day. I was, ran into some people, had my dogs and whatnot, and they said, "Oh, what's in your cup?" And I'm like, "Well, coffee, of course." And they're like, "Well, that's a wine tumbler." And I'm like, "Oh, no, no, it's a coffee mug." And they're like, "No, that's a wine tumbler." And then all of a sudden, I thought to myself, "Is that why I'm not making friends quickly in this neighborhood?" Because everybody thinks I'm going out with wine every morning. So, just so everybody knows, it is coffee.
We love you and we believe you. If you want to try to convince us that it's your coffee, we're good with that. Well, good morning, everybody. I cannot believe that this is the last Wake Up Wednesday of the year. It's been an awesome year. And I really, we've had some great speakers this entire year. And of course, last week we had Monica teaching us about referrals and everything else. But I wanted to bring something really strong. And I had been manifesting who was going to be my last speaker of the year. And all of a sudden, my dear friend Amy, who is also a business partner, we've known each other for 10 years out in California. Can I tell them what
Yeah.
you're doing? So, when we talk about giving people grace and patience, and just because someone says no right now, it doesn't mean no forever. Just a little bit of a background. I met Amy 10 years ago when I moved out to California. I wanted her to work with me desperately at Keller Williams. I mean, we talked for years. We still remained great friends, but it wasn't the right time. And then we started talking about EXP, and I wanted her to come work with us, and it just wasn't the right time. So here we are 10 years later, two companies later, and Amy just said yes to joining EXP. So, um, love on people, don't give up on them. And I just think that's just a testament to what we really are all about here, because that's one of the things that we say. It's just because someone says no, that doesn't mean they can't be in your circle. You can't still be friends with them. You can't still have relationships with them. You just have to wait till the timing is right. And I want to give a shout out to Michelle Mamo because we are doing a co-sponsor with Amy. And I brought Michelle on because, as you know, she's launched Turkey, and Amy is going to be working on the growth with New Zealand. So lots of great things happening here. Amy, I have watched her for 10 years be a leader, run different platforms, always show up at the board meetings as a professional, always giving back. she's just one of those people that obviously I wanted to be around because I kept saying, I want to work with you. And we would talk and have coffee and say, someday it will happen. And here we are. And her first week at EXP, she said yes to showing up at 6 a.m. in California and giving us her class a sneak peek to what she has been teaching internationally on how to be the best negotiator out there. So, Amy, with all of that, thank you so much. My heart is just so full today. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you do your background story and brag on yourself a bit.
Well, thank you so much. I might just clear my throat a little bit because I'm haven't completely used my voice yet this morning. So please be patient with me. Firstly, I just wanted to say thank you all for coming on today, and you know, hopefully this will be a great session for you. I want to thank Peggy and Michelle, but I wanted to thank Peggy especially for number one having the patience with me and keeping in touch. We definitely circle back and go to Antoine's once a year in Orange County to have a nice breakfast.
Oh,
And and I just wanted to share with all of you that we're in some crazy times right now, and so you know, in the world and you know, just in our business and whatnot. And the coolest thing about I think about what I'm doing is I really kind of bring a different focus and different approach to maybe your thinking around your business and around you know the industry and in general. And so yeah, so today I wanted to kind of firstly talk about what we're going to be talking about. Obviously, you know it's about negotiation. And so but I just wanted to kind of give you the agenda of what we're talking about today. So firstly, I'm going to talk to you about my background. Secondly, we talked about finding value in an AI world. And so we're certainly going to dig down into that and maybe some of the things that I'm going to be doing around negotiation. Negotiation also is, it's the last human stronghold, really, with regards to what we do in the business. Everything else can be automated and whatnot. So we're going to be talking about that and talking about specifically the anchors and the resistance points of negotiation and why I do what I do. So I have not prepared. There's one thing that I haven't done is prepared slides. I have a million bits of information with regards to my workshops and whatnot, but to really kind of fit everything into where it's applicable to all of you, I'm just going to ask you guys to take notes if you want to. And then if you want to actually circle back with anything or with me personally, then we can do that. And I also am going to dig down as to why we aren't better negotiators, why we kind of shy away from this whole subject of negotiation, and then tell you a little bit about my business. So that's kind of where we're going to try to get to in this hour. If at any time something, if you really feel compelled to ask a question, maybe Peggy, if you want to, jump in, look at, I don't know how you manage the chat and whatnot, but I'm certainly going to leave some time at the end to ask and do some questions and answers and whatnot. But so we'll get into it.
okay. And Annie helps with the chat as well there. So
Perfect. Perfect. So firstly, my background. My name's Amy Gardner. I live in Orange County in San Clemente, but I also I go back and forth between here and New Zealand because I was dragged over back to New Zealand by my husband about 25 years ago. Met him at I was playing basketball at San Jose State University, and met him, and he is a New Zealander, and we went back to New Zealand. And when I was in New Zealand is where I started my real estate. It started into the real estate industry. Owned a couple of brokerages, smaller brokerages with some top companies over there. And some of you will know that New Zealand, Australia, and Australasia in general is very familiar with auction as just a form of marketing in business. And so when I got into the business, I became very, very strong at auction. I loved many aspects of auction, but I'll kind of go into that a little bit, while I'm doing this training. And if you don't like auction, it's totally okay. I'm just kind of going to give you a little bit of an overview. And so I became very good at auction, but instead of actually labeling that I was very good at auction, I realized it was actually the negotiation within the auction that I was good at. I didn't realize that for a long time. I just thought I was good at this thing called auction.
Mhm.
And it just really, really suited me. About 10 years ago, we moved the family. I have three children. We moved the family to Orange County primarily because we're a family of athletes, and my children really wanted to pursue their lives and in the sporting world. And it's worked out. My two older children have both played college sport, and my youngest is on his way. And so we've based ourselves in Orange County. And when I came to Orange County, I became actually the auction director for some of you may have heard the company Harcourts. If you've ever they're kind of dotted around the US. They're not a big company. They're huge in Australasia, but they're not huge in the US. Although they have a good presence in Southern California, and I'm going to pat myself on the back for for that, because 10 years ago I was really probably quite a catalyst in terms of them starting their live auction platform through Southern California. So I became the auction director, and primarily my role was to assist agents in listing properties of sellers that they couldn't get over the line. So I would get on the phone with them and help them list a property, and then I would help manage their property all the way through to an auction. So I was running anywhere from could be 15 to 25 auctions per month. And so I was actually dealing with the agent, the seller, the buyer, everybody in the mix, and trying to actually funnel them through um, to a successful transaction. And so the touch points of those transactions all the way along in that auction, I was controlling everything with regards to how we did that negotiation. The cool thing about that was I found with the agents, once I started coaching them through the negotiation, they would only really have to run it with me. I'd say maybe do 4 or 5 auctions, and all of a sudden, once they got strong themselves, they didn't really need me anymore. I'd set it up with them, and then we'd close it down, and then they became fantastic negotiators themselves. And still to this day, it's really neat. I have people that circle back to me all the time and just say, like, there's nobody that's taught negotiation the way that you do. And so I've really celebrated the fact that I've created some very strong negotiators in my time, simply through the passion that I have for it. So I became the auction director. Left Harcourts a couple of years ago, about probably 4 or 5 years ago, and went to Coldwell Banker, and just did my own, sort of real estate and some auctions with Coldwell Banker. But I found myself becoming sought after from people that could not get properties over the line. They couldn't get them sold. I was dealing with properties that had been on the market for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years. Has anybody ever dealt with a property that's been on the market for 10 years? I have, and I did get it sold within 30 days. Um, and and I kind of for a bit, I went into this victim space of like, why me? Why why am I dealing with all the crap out there on the market, and why is it always attracted to me? And then I kind of turned around after, like, getting these properties sold, and thought to myself, oh, well, maybe that's what I'm supposed to be doing. What I'm supposed to be helping people and actually getting things over the line and helping them with some strategies. And so I had these agents turn back to me and just say, Amy, why don't you teach this? Why, nobody teaches in negotiation. So I had a few, people telling me that. And I thought, that's actually right. Okay, I'm going to do a little test here. Um, if we, you can either just put your hand up or put your hand up. Has anybody ever on this call ever done a negotiation course?
I don't think so.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that just nuts? That is nuts. And you know what? When I did a keynote, oh, okay. I think I had one person waving. And typically, when you do a negotiation course, it's from somebody that has really either never done the business or the negotiation course that is kind of a broad stroke negotiation course, like a business negotiation course, and you have to apply it back to real estate. And and so when I started doing the research, I'm like, surely there's got to be more negotiation coaches out there, and surely, I've got to find someone out there that can actually teach this. So as I dug deeper and dug deeper and dug deeper, I realized that there was hardly anything. There was hardly anything. There's Harvard courses, there's Chris Voss, there's, whatnot, but really applicable to our industry, there's very little. So when I started to reverse engineer what I do and what I feel was really important in our industry, I started to realize that the concepts that I'm going to be sharing with you probably seem like very simple concepts to all of you, but we don't use them. And there's reasons why we don't use them. So I'm going to cover that off a little bit as well. And so when I did a speaking event earlier the year, I did a keynote speaking event in New Zealand. Hold on, took a slurp. And I did exactly the same thing. There was about 500 people in the room. And I asked people to hold their hand up if they had ever done a negotiation course. And there was probably maybe two out of 500. And the one thing I can say about the New Zealand real estate industry is it's a very high caliber of real estate agent. There's no part-timers in the industry because their commissions are not as high as, your commissions in the US. So very high caliber of agent. And I just could not believe that there wasn't, more negotiation training. So it got me thinking. I've really got to dig down deeper into that. So I was doing a lot of research into negotiation. I structured a course, and 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 really got a lot of feedback from people along the way in terms of what was important and what was stopping them. So firstly, I just want to hit on the fact of I'm going to read you something that I pulled up just this morning. When I asked AI, because that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about, is the importance of why negotiation is so important in our industry. I asked AI, in an AI world where where should real estate agents upskill to survive in the right order? Number one, and I'll show you, negotiation and strategic judgment. Number one, that's coming from AI, right? Why? Because AI can calculate, AI can predict, AI can draft. AI cannot read emotional leverage. It cannot manage silence and pressure. It cannot reframe fear into decision. It cannot protect clients from themselves. It cannot adapt a strategy mid-negotiation. Now, we all know that as agents, right? But we don't talk about it enough. That's the thing is we're all chasing. There's no problem with chasing and understanding systems and processes and technology and AI. I want you guys, because the other thing that they will say is that the number two is really diving into the AI systems, technologies, and whatnot as to bring the leads in. The one thing that being a strong negotiator, you can be the strongest negotiator in the world, but if you don't have anybody to work with, then you're not going to be negotiating, right? So it's very, very important to understand that we have this within us. We have this tool, this communication ability as an agent. If you're in the business, you've come into the business because you have the ability to communicate, right? You have the ability to be able to build trust with people. You have the ability to be able to be empathetic. You have the ability to just create a bond and help people and move people through. But we don't use it enough. And there's a real reason why we don't actually understand why negotiation is so important, and we don't lead with that conversation. And I will tell you the reason why is because we're scared. We are scared of the word of negotiation because we are scared. We think that negotiation exists somewhere outside of us. We don't know what good negotiation looks like, do we? We really don't. And the reason why primarily is because in our head, negotiation, we want to negotiate to price, and we always negotiate to price. You can sit there and you can talk about the motivations of your client. You can talk about, everything about their family and their background and their community and the market, and everything to go into this negotiation. But at the end of the day, you come into that negotiation and you negotiate on price. When in reality, if you actually take the price out of it, and you actually understand that the timing of negotiation is going to really come down to the value points of that client, the resistance of that client, which we're going to talk about, and the timing, and those value points are going to win out over the price. So how many, raise your hand if you've had a situation before where you've actually got your client the price that you thought they wanted and they still didn't accept it. Yep. And why the heck is that? It's because you were negotiating to the price. You weren't actually negotiating, you weren't reading the room, if you will, right? And so if we think about those anchor points around the value points of negotiation, now all of a sudden, it is not about price. And in fact, it never was, right? And so, because if it was about price, and if it was only about price, then I'm also going to ask you to raise your hand if you've ever actually sold a property for way less than you ever thought the seller was going to accept. They told you what they wanted, and you got it done, and you were so proud of yourself. But how and why did they accept that? Because it wasn't about price. So if there's anything that you actually understand about negotiation, the price will happen, right? And if you actually go into a negotiation with that calmness, that you can actually say to your seller that we're going to get to a price, we don't know what that price is going to be, because I'm going to tell you something. And if you can tell your seller this, if we knew what your house was going to sell for, if the price, if this was the actual price of your property that we're putting it into the market for, why wouldn't everybody pay it? And I just want you to sit on that. If that was the actual price, why wouldn't everybody pay it? So I'm trying to get across to you that the price, it's kind of like an appraiser. You can have, 5 appraisers and they're going to come up with different prices. So I think that you really need to drill down to your clients. Even if at the beginning, you might actually have to come in there and back their price a bit and just say, look, I understand that you want something for some reason. It's my job to uncover with you as to why we need that. But also it's got to marry up with the market as to why the market wants to pay what they want to pay as well. Okay. Somewhere in between, there's going to be a figure that we settle at. And I want to make sure that you have enough information to make that decision. Okay. So my first and most important point is that we go out there and we negotiate to price, and therefore we think that we're good negotiators. But if we can't get that price, then all of a sudden we label the situation, and we have so many lovely labels for our sellers. They're unmotivated. They're being ridiculous. Oh, there's lots of labels we could put on our sellers, right? Because that what it does is it whitewashes the situation that we're out there actually trying to get their price. We find another price that we think that the property is worth. And all of a sudden, mentally, they're here, we're here, and everywhere in between is what we're ignoring. Everywhere in between are all these value points and all these anchors and the resistance points that we do not actually pay attention to. So what I'm going to ask you to do is if if you go into a situation where you've had to actually, put a property into the market, a little bit overpriced, don't worry about it. Because if you actually truly believe in your heart that can become a strong negotiator, and you can because you all have it within you, um, then it doesn't actually matter what you price a property at. It really doesn't. And some of you will be like, well, yeah, it does because you won't actually get people through the property. Yes, but then there can be conversations around that as well. So, and soon you'll go from being able to have the conversation with your sellers before you actually price the property, so that you're in a better position to negotiate, if that makes sense. Okay. So finding value in an AI world is about the fact that they're okay. So let's put it this way. I'm sitting in a house right now that's probably worth 1.9 to $2 million. Okay. In Texas, it's probably 400,000. I don't know. In Ohio, it's probably 250, but I live in Orange County, so it's 1.9 with $2 million. That doesn't make sense, right? Now, when I go to sell it, if I'm in a solid place financially, I'm gonna hold out for my 1.9 or $2 million, right? If I'm and if I'm in no hurry to leave. If I'm in, like, I have to be somewhere on a deadline, I might accept less. If I'm in a financial constraint, I will definitely accept even less. If I have a health problem, I will definitely accept less. Can AI tell us, can AI actually decipher me as a seller whether either one of those five things are going on? No, it can't yet. I mean, there might be some robots floating around that can read us, or Siri or whatever, right? But right now in this world, we need to be able to have the conversations with our sellers, with all the stuff that's going on in this world. There are lots of health problems. How many people? My niece just passed away from cancer just a few weeks ago. How many people do we know that are sick out there in the world right now? So that property that sold down the road for X amount of dollars, we don't know whether or not they were totally financially fantastic and they could have held out, or whatever, or they had health issues or whatnot. So there's lots of things that skew things in the market. So we need to make sure that we understand that in negotiations and being able to have our conversations around value points as well. So there's a couple of different things that I want to talk to you about primarily. And one of the biggest things that I want you to realize is, with negotiation, there's four different resistance points in negotiation. Okay. And I want you to write these down if you are taking notes. Okay. So there's four different resistance points. There's simple resistance, and give yourself some space to write some notes in here. There's logical resistance. There's competitive resistance, and there's uninformed resistance. Okay. And you're not going to find this anywhere except for in my, you're going to find maybe talk about resistance here and there in negotiation, but not these four. This is essentially me drilling down of 25 years in the business, of actually understanding when I'm dealing with someone in a high pressure situation. And I've done thousands of auctions where I've actually had to negotiate to a certain point or negotiate to a certain deadline. I realize that when we really get into the pressure cooker of situations, the resistance that comes up is not all the same, right? Now, just hold that thought for a second, and I'm going to give you some notes about these resistance points. Then I'm going to talk to you about when we're trained in negotiation. And sorry, I've got to take a bit more coffee. When we've been trained in negotiation, and I can even say that 8 or 9 years ago when I went to a Mike Ferry conference, they were taught, they were training in this as well. What do we get trained on as agents? What's the easiest way to say, oh, this is how to approach a negotiation and approach sellers? Can anybody, I'm going to pick on somebody. Michelle, what is the one area that they try to train us on when it comes to understanding people and negotiations?
Wow, you put me on the spot. What do they train us on? And like their personality?
Yes, everybody give Michelle a big hand. Personality types. That's about the only type of negotiation training that we have, right?
Oh,
Let's break down the personality type as if we're going into a situation with our sellers and buyers, and we're now trying to decipher whether or not they're a driver, or an introvert, or an extrovert, or this, that, and the next thing. And then we're trained so well that we can change our approach depending on their personality type, right?
mhm.
It's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. Throw the whole personality type thing out the door. I'm not saying that personality types don't exist, but here's your aha moment in negotiation, right? When people are under pressure, do you think that they show their authentic personality type? No, they don't, right?
Yeah.
Most people, if I ask them what type of personality they think I am, all of you, I would say, let's say 90% of you would say that, oh, she's a driver, right? No, I'm not a driver. Actually, in fact, I have to train myself when I'm speaking to be super confident, to be like, because I'm this little girl and I'm actually an amiable. I want everybody to like me. I want everybody, like that is my true authentic. It's why I made 23 food packets for my son's team because I want them to like me, right? You don't do that if you're a driver because you don't have time to do it. So, what I'm trying to say is that when we're in these high pressure negotiations, the personality types do not matter. And in fact, you might be in a situation where, let's give an example, and I don't want to be sexist here or anything like that, but man and woman, and typically, or not typically, but sometimes it is the man that's kind of making the last financial decision. But whilst we're in the negotiations and we're going back and forth, the man would just say, "Oh, just talk to Sandy. Just deal with Sandy. She'll tell you what she wants. She'll just," and he'll throw his Sandy, the housewife, in front of the negotiations, and Sandy now has to go, "No, yes, yes, no, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah." And Sandy's never been in a negotiation. She's never sold anything in her life. So Sandy's being pushed out there. And now Sandy's having to be pretty tough. And you've gone through this whole thing. And you think, oh, we're there in the negotiations because, Sandy's really done. And then all of a sudden, when we go to get that last signature, Bob stands in and goes, I'm not freaking accepting that. Right? We feel like we've gone so far along the way, but we haven't actually involved everybody into the situation, and we've just taken everybody at face value, right? And also Bob said, or we have sellers saying, look, I'm busy, just text me during the day unless an offer comes in. I don't really want to hear about it, right? We've had those sellers and buyers before, right? You're not in control of the negotiation. So there's no way that I can teach you everything in this hour phone call, but I want to let you know that when I teach a negotiation, it's actually about trying to very gently get control over the negotiation and bring people out of the woodwork so that they're as close to their authentic space as possible. And then you can actually understand what type of resistance levels that we're dealing with, or different types of resistance that we're dealing with. Does that make sense to everyone? So, if we're dealing with people that are in the situation of selling a home, which could be one of the most stressful situations in their life, they're not going to be their authentic personalities. So if anybody's ever trained you in personalities, say, great. If you want to hire somebody, you want to understand their personality, whether you can work with them. That's the only reason why I would look at maybe personality types. But in negotiation, it really doesn't mean jack poop. Okay. So let's get that. So, some of the, first things that I want you to understand is that price has nothing to do with it. So if price has nothing to do with it, then why are we experiencing anxiety around the price? Okay. So then we have to actually understand how to bring out some of the resistance points, bring out some of the value points of what's happening, and asking more questions, calibrated questions, calibrated questions that lead us to getting more information. All right. So going back to the resistance points. So simple, logical, competitive, uninformed. All right. Simple resistance is that resistance when I'm trying to get in the negotiation and people are pushing back, they might just say, look, I don't know why. I just don't feel right about it. It just doesn't feel good. I mean, I don't know. I don't really like those people. It's just like there's just no reason. There's no logic around why they don't really want to accept the offer yet. It might be, oh, it's too quick. Like, oh, we've just been on the market for a couple of weeks. We've heard it all, right? Simple resistance is just kind of airy fairy, but it is probably the easiest resistance to try to dive into. You just need to kind of get them back into the box and just say, okay, remind them of some of the points that they had brought up as to why they're selling and whatnot. So it's an easy resistance to kind of tackle, but there are different ways to tackle a simple resistance. You really have to get them dialed in and constantly remind them of some of the things that they've told you and pull out more information. All right. So simple resistance there. And I I don't want to put a sex to it because or gender to it, because it seriously is just something that that people, especially these days, are going a lot with their gut. They're going a lot with stress. They're going a lot with different things like this. So they're leading with that in negotiations. And so I define that as just a simple resistance. Okay. So going into, and you can actually even put more notes into, there's going to be things that are popping up in your heads. I'm seeing people's head go up and down when I'm saying some of these things. You're like, oh my God, I'm thinking about somebody that's in this simple resistance right now that they can't really explain themselves. So I have to ask them more questions and get them to talk more. And the more someone in simple resistance doesn't actually understand why they're resisting, the more that you can bring that out in them, the more you can actually steer them into actually understanding what they will accept, right? Okay. And they'll start to actually realize that there's no real logic around why they won't accept an offer or why they won't accept certain terms. Okay. So I might deal with somebody like this. Okay. Well, let's just keep price to the side. Let's just kind of go through the other points of this offer. And I know all of you have probably done that at one point or another. It's just like, oh, let's just put that price to the side for a moment because we'll get to the price. Let's just take this point by point. And sometimes you actually have to do that with people that are in their simple resistance phase. And when you do that point by point, all of a sudden, like once you get acceptance on those point by point, right? Then all of a sudden it's a lot easier then to come back and talk about price. Okay. Talk about the actual figure. Okay. Now I know, and you all know that you've done this at one point or another. So now I'm proving to you that you actually you have the ability to be great negotiators. You just don't know that you are great negotiators. There's definitely ways that all of you can improve. I'll tell you that, right? But once you start to frame a lot of these skills that you already have, you yourself will feel so confident that you can actually go out there and say, I'm a negotiation specialist because I actually do understand what I'm doing. I do understand what is marketing, what is prospecting, what is negotiating. Okay. So going into logical resistance is somebody that is basing it to facts and figures. All right. These are our investors. These are our people that just like, it's just got to make sense to them. That it's not emotional. Um, and the craziest thing is when we have, and it always happens when we have a husband and wife or husband and husband or wife and wife, there tends to be one that's in one type of resistance and one that's in another type of resistance. So then you actually get you all the facts and figures make sense, and Bob's going, yep, this makes sense. Yep, that's right. Yep, it make all let's sell. And Sandy goes, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. So now we're dealing with different types of resistance, right? And so instead of the personality types, I'm trying to get you to understand that there is a way in which you actually have to deal with one person in terms of the resistance that they're sitting in and identify that, and then also another type. And so you're talking to both people, and once you solve both sides, and now you can talk differently to each, rather than just like, I'm such good friends with Sandy, I know I'm going to sell this property, right? We do that. We become best friends with our clients until we can't sell their property, and then they never talk to us again. We've all had that before, right? Not me, because I've sold every part of it. No, just kidding. So I just want to tell you that now we're dealing with that. So I just want you to understand that, okay, instead of dealing with personalities, we can now, you'll be able to go out there like laser focus if you really dive into these resistance types. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's logical resistance. She's going to be this. So how do I deal with that? Right. So logical resistance, pretty easy. Facts and figures, numbers, time frames. If it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Okay. With these types of people, you actually have to soften the sides with these people. You have to actually try to get them out of just their facts and figures, especially if they're in a partnership with somebody else. So it's now talking to Bob about the fact that, hey, look, I understand that we're going to get to a point, even before you get into the negotiations, I actually understand that we're going to get to a point where all these facts and figures and whatnot are going to make sense. But there's some really Sandy wants her she shed, and that's really important to her. And so, so we have to, you see what I'm doing here? So I'm trying to be empathetic to both sides as to what's important to them. And it's not just about the value points in the property, or it's not just about price if they're selling. Okay. So competitive resistance. This is an interesting one. And if I broke it down, I'd say this is probably ends up to be maybe, 5 or 10% of sellers or buyers. And competitive resistance is the fact that they just want to win. Just want to win the negotiation. It doesn't have to make sense. They just want to know that they won, right? I'll give an example of this. I was in an auction years ago. This is probably 20 years ago. And there's no worse negotiation than two single men against each other. I have to say it. I've done thousands of negotiations. Two single men, ego, 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 ego. Sorry, men. It's just the way it is. And I will tell you, I love the fact that men are on this call, because it tells me that all of the men on this call have you definitely have ego intact, and ego is not a bad thing, but it basically means that you're on this call because you still think that you have improvements to make with negotiation. I will tell you that more often than not, when I have an in-person workshop, it's going to be 80 to 90% women, because men can't admit or won't admit that they feel like they should be just be naturally good negotiators. But in fact, in the household, who's the better negotiator? Women. Sometimes. Okay. Well, no, I won't say that. I'm gonna come back and stomp on that because men tend to act like they're listening. They're not really listening, but they tend to act like they're listening. And we do need to listen. Women just talk too much. So no, I'm gonna just take that right back. Anyways, story is it is sometimes difficult to actually get with when you're dealing with two men. Okay. And this particular story, it was a man selling quite a large home, and it was 20 plus years ago. And this home was about $1 million, which, these days would be $3 million, right? 4 million. So this home was about $1 million. And it was a very big deal for me because I was listing the property. And that property, if I sold that property, the guy that was selling the property was buying another property of mine. And that couple was buying another property of mine. And that couple, so it was a chain. It was a chain of about four in a chain. So this was very important for me to get this deal together because it was about $100,000 day. And back then, that's like $1 million, right? So, anyways, selling the property, I'm taking the buyer, which is a single man that was moving down from Auckland to Christchurch in New Zealand, and he was a veterinarian, and that's going to become important soon. So I'm taking him through the property, big, beautiful, like Miami Vice looking property. And I notice he's taking quite a bit of interest in this cat in the house. And I'm trying to like show him all the different aspects of this, but he's more in tune with the cat. And he's just like, that cat's not being looked after. And I'm like, okay, maybe do you want me to get it some water, food, milk? What do you do? And I said, well, I can ask the owner, if he's looking after his cat, but do you like the property? He's like, oh yeah, I like the house, but the cat's not being looked after. Okay. So we have a second appointment. He's now looking for the cat. He's not even looking at the house. He's made a decision that he wants the house. He's now looking at the cat. So without even knowing it, and now I look back at this, I took note of the fact that he wanted the house, but the cat was more important to him, which is so crazy. But this is a very extreme example of, finding those value points. So it wasn't actually really about price, was it? It was about the fact that that he had something that he couldn't get over. So it came down to auction day. He's in there as a buyer, and I got him up on the auction floor, what we call, negotiation and open auction, to about 970. And then we went into, once it kind of stalls, if anybody's been in an auction, if once it stalls, and then we go into negotiation, we get up to about 975, which you would think, I mean, the reserve was $1 million. We're very, very close. Martin, the seller, was just holding out for no particular reason whatsoever. He knew he had to sell. He knew he wanted the other property, but he's just kind of like, no, I'm going to hold out for this figure. We're going back and forth. I'm putting furniture into the contract. I'm putting all these different things, and we get to about, again, close to 980. And the auction rooms are now like shutting down, cafes closing. And I'm like, we are not leaving here. I know you want the property. I know you want to sell the property. We're not leaving here until we figure it out. So I went to the buyer and I just said, you care a lot about that cat. And you obviously don't think that Martin looks after the cat. If I got Martin to throw the cat in the deal, would you accept it? He's like, yeah, I would pay 980 if the cat was in the deal. So, so I'm like, look, he loves that cat. I know that he wouldn't, I knew Martin didn't give a shit about the cat. He loves that cat. I don't know if I can get him to do it, but if I can, we're doing this deal. He's like, yeah, we'll do the deal. So I go to Martin. I'm just like, Martin, you're not going to believe this, but I can get him to 980, but you're going to have to throw the cat in the deal. Like, he can have the fucking cat. I don't care. Just give him the 980. I'm like, no, Martin, we have to look like you really care about this cat, right? And the point being, so we did get the contract together. I did actually have to write the cat into the deal. It's the only time I've ever had an animal that's outside of like a farm in a deal. Um, and but my point was in all of that was the fact that when it came down to it, when it came, both of them just needed to win. They needed to feel, Martin needed to feel like he got like no less than his bottom figure, which was 980. And Martin needed to, you know, or the buyer needed to really feel like he had a win as well. Because and that was, I've got this guy's cat, right? I've got his cat. And and happily ever after, all the deals went through. But it was an example. And in terms of their behavior as well, it was so much about winning, it didn't actually logically make sense, right? I've had times where, and I'm sure all of you have dealt with this before, where you've had times where, people just said, look, I don't know why I want that. Or they moved the goalpost just because they know it, I don't want to make it too easy on them. So understand what you're dealing with when it comes to competitive resistance. And this is probably one of the hardest types of resistance to get across, because you're dealing with ego. You're dealing with the negative side of the ego. And so you're having to appeal to the fact that your time is worth something. And now you need to get a bit of ego yourself. And there's particular ways that you can do that as well. The last one is uninformed resistance. And this is the one that we can actually control the most when it comes to agents. And it's the one where we fail the most as well. Now, you believe that you've given the comps to your client, you've given them enough information, you've told them how wonderful you are and what a great agent you are, and then all of a sudden they're not making the decision that you think that they should make, even though you're close to the price and whatnot. And it's because you haven't given them enough data or information or the value points that are going to get them to make a decision. And so that's what I call uninformed resistance. You've heard that they might even just say it outwardly. They might even just say, I don't have enough information to make a decision. I don't have enough data. Most of them won't say data, but, or they might resist in another way that kind of looks like simple resistance, but it's not. It's actually uninformed resistance, because we, as an agent, sometimes when we get busy, we just kind of gloss over the fact that, oh, I got that price, so why are they not accepting? It's because I actually haven't taken the time to actually have those touch points with them and made them understand what the market and what the people in the market are doing. Because a lot of times I will tell you, when I'm thinking about the market or the industry, we often refer to it almost as if it doesn't have a face. And the market has a face. We all have faces here. Well, some of us do. And and we have to understand that the market has a face. And so when we deal with the buyers and we're trying to respect them and what they're saying, I want you to understand this. When you disrespect buyers in the market, you're shooting yourself in the foot, and you're never going to become the negotiator that you truly can be. And I'm not just talking about buyers that are willing to pay your price. I'm talking about every single buyer in the market. Thank you so much for those people that are giving me a thumbs up. Because I will tell you this, that buyer that wanted to pay 1.5 million for your $2 million property that you disrespected and just said, look, I'm not even going to write it up. They're not even going to accept that. And you've all done it. Don't even say that you haven't. Don't even say that you have not written you've purposely said, I'm not even going to waste my time. right? Well, guess what? You need to start wasting your time. The reason why you need to start wasting your time is because that buyer in the market that is the shrewd, astute buyer that wants to actually get the deal, when you respect them, they're connected to many other people, right? They are also the one that you may have to come back to when you realize that, oh shit, my property is not worth 2 million. It's actually worth 1.7, and it's a lot closer to the 1.5 than I actually thought. And where's that 1.5 now? Right? So if you actually hold and respect those buyers in, not only are you putting a face to the market and putting a face to what you're doing, a face to your negotiations, but also you're holding them in. So now they create the competition. And I know that a lot of you know this. They create the competition for other offers that may come in, the offers that are at 185 or 187. Now all of a sudden you're in a multi-offer situation. And so you can get that 185, 187, 19 up a bit because they don't know that the other offer is 1.5, right? But if you actually just shoo away all these other offers that you don't want to waste your time with, you don't have the competition that you need. And I'm going to give you another insight here. Your sellers, they're excited about being, even though it's stressful, they're actually excited about bringing their property to the market. And there's nothing more deflating than having no activity, nothing to look at, nothing to combat against, nothing to argue with, nothing to. So they want to be in a relationship. They want to be in a relationship with you, and you're just going out there looking for the right price, right? You're looking for someone to pay the price. So get that out of your head. And I want you to think about your negotiations as a funnel. Okay. You just need to look at people to get into that funnel, right? Get them into that funnel so you can start to work with them and start to establish understanding why they want to pay that price. Okay. Now, even though you have different types of resistance from your seller with those negotiations, okay, you now can have a conversation with them, and you're a conduit of the information, right? You're a conduit of this negotiation, right? Does everybody know what a conduit is? Because sometimes it's a word that we don't use very often. A conduit is basically buyer seller here, and I'm an agent back here. You're a conduit. You're trying to get your buyer and seller together. But quite often we do this. We are between the buyer and seller, and we become this filter, this firewall, and we are preventing the deal from happening. When in reality, if you actually think about yourself in a physical space of I'm bringing the market, the face, the buyers together with the seller. And I have this space to make up, and I'm going to do that through constant information, constant calibrated questioning, constant, um, um, you know, massaging of the deal to where they get as close as possible. Because I tell you, once they get this close, the deal just comes together. If we're not there, it's like, no, you're going to pay this much more. No, you have got to actually understand that we put ourselves in the middle of a deal because we have an assumption as to what that property is going to sell for. So when I talk about these levels of resistance, the simple, logical, competitive, and uninformed resistance, if you can actually identify, and it will change as well. Somebody might actually be one type of resistance to start with, and then they'll change as they go along, right? I'm also going to tell you that we collect this bit of information. We think that we know everything about our sellers as to why they're selling, and we don't continue to ask more questions as we go along. And there's certain ways that I teach in my training as to keeping the information fresh. And how hard is it to keep information fresh when you've had something on the market for 90 days or 120 days or
Or long.
6 months?
Yep.
or a year? How hard is it to keep that information fresh and to go and revisit it again? But if you're truly in negotiation, if you're truly a negotiation specialist, number one, you wouldn't get past 60 days anyways. I hate to say it, you just wouldn't. Okay. But if you're in that space of having something on the market for a very long time, I do teach strategies in terms of getting, it's almost like getting the volcano to erupt again. And you have got to be starting to be comfortable with debate and pushback and getting the no and getting that resistance happening, because after a while you have got to understand that when your sellers start to see themselves pushing back on everything, all of a sudden that bedroom conversation, they're going to start to talk to each other and go, maybe our property is worth 1.6. Maybe our property is worth 500,000 and we didn't really know it. That seems to be they're not going to tell you that,
Right.
right?
Amy, it's the
Yeah.
top of the hour already. It's
Oh my
actually,
gosh.
yeah. This was great, guys. Would you put your number out in the chat? I know that some people asked for that.
Yeah. So my phone number, I will put it in the chat. But it's 949-304-9138. Also take note of this, prolevelnegotiation.com. That is my website. And you'll see it's just kind of a holding site, shows you a little bit about what I do.
Amy, one more time.
Oh, Pro level, Level negotiation. Hopefully you know how to spell that. .com, prolevelnegotiation.com. That actually has my email in there. Probably better to send me an email or
And phone number?
949 304 9138.
So I just want to say thank you, Amy. I want to wish everyone an amazing holiday. The next 2 weeks, we're off. The first week that we're going to be back on, let me just get that exact date, is going to be January 7th, I believe. Hopefully that's Wednesday, January 7th. I will be in Puerto Rico with Jean. And my goal is to twist his arm to do the book, to do the first training on the book. So you guys, thank you for showing up. I'm so grateful to every one of you. Amy, thank you very, very much. Annie, thanks for your help there. I just can't say enough about this group. I love you guys. Be safe. We'll see you in the new year. And I say Merry Christmas. So Merry Christmas, guys.
Can I take just 1 minute, Peggy, and also just say to everyone, I appreciate having, obviously being on this morning. I hope you got something from it.
I did.
I actually have a book coming out, a negotiation book for real estate, a book coming out early in the new year. I do actually have negotiation certification courses as well. And so please email me if you want to know any more about that. And I really sincerely appreciate your time. Sorry I ran over a little bit.
That's okay. We loved it.
We love it.
Thank you. And we got this on recording, so we'll be up on Jean's website shortly. Thanks, guys. Love everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Peggy.
Thanks,
Happy
Peggy.
holidays. I'm running
Merry
because I'm
Christmas,
going to catch a plane.
everybody. Thanks you, Amy.
Happy holidays.
Thanks. I'm headed to Connecticut. I'll see you guys. Bye.
Christmas in Connecticut, huh?
Christmas in Connecticut, New Year's in Puerto Rico. See you guys later. Bye.